My name's Sean Oxspring. I'm a game designer, and for some reason people think that I like bees. So here's a talk about bees. In this video, I'm going to be talking about bees and their representation in video games. This might seem like a weird and trivial thing to talk about, but I find it really interesting, and if you listen to my mouth words, then you might actually find it interesting too. Bees are pretty cool. They're a unique type of insect. Unlike most eusocial hive-based creatures, their colonies don't die out over winter, which means instead of taking up ages in spring to get busy and lay a ton of eggs, they get a one-up on most other pollinators and start sending out their workers much earlier. Without bees, we'd see a lot of spring flowering plants and vegetation start to disappear, because there just wouldn't be the pollinating workforce out there to help them out. I've been a beekeeper in the past and I've had a load of good experiences with bees. They tend to be a pretty chill bunch of girls who just want to get on with their lives. Yes, pretty much all bees are female other than the drones, which are basically born to eat loads of food and then go out and have sex once before their genitals are ripped off and they die. Also, I've never been stung as of yet. I've always been disappointed by the way bees have been represented in the media and in video games. I feel like it's created a really bad negative stereotype for bees in the eyes of the general public. So come with me now as we dive into the hive of video games, media, and their portrayal of bees. It's gonna be interesting, probably. Part 1. Bees in the general media. From the years 1966 to 1967, there were no less than 6 major films about bees being unavoidable, world-ending monsters that sprung directly from the twisted mind of Mother Nature herself. Films like The Deadly Bees and The Swarm preyed upon the general public's unfamiliarity with the truth about bees. They portrayed them as mindless, hateful creatures that belonged to an otherworldly hive mind that humanity couldn't possibly comprehend, and as such it needed to be feared and destroyed. Bees are easy to exploit because people have a natural fear of the other, and a general dislike, for the most part, of being hurt. You may have noticed the swarm trope that occurs in a lot of popular media, cartoons and the like, where a huge mass of bees chases a person, bear or another object. I've always really disliked this trope, because it makes people deathly afraid of real bee swarms, which are for the most part pretty harmless. Real bee swarms are just a bunch of bees trying to find a new home. If you ever see a swarm like this, get in contact with your local beekeeping association and they'll come and scrape them into a sheet and take them to a nice new hive. The proliferation of bees as a malevolent force of nature resonates to this day. Why, even when I tried to source data for this video, I had a few people sending me tweets like this one. Over time, film and TV have started to lay off the bees, but the sinister undertones for both bees and apiculture as a whole are still there. Case in point, that one scene from the Wickerman that we all know and love. People keep sending me this video on Twitter. Why? I've seen it before, guys. Stop, please. Oh, and before you ask, I'm not going to be talking about this movie. Moving swiftly on. Part 2. Bees in games.
What do you think this is? What do you think that is? I don't know. But I want to explain an intuition I have, okay? If something looks like bees, it doesn't matter if it is or isn't bees, don't touch it, okay? And this town reminds me of bees.
There's a lot of bees in games. I'm going to look at a few of them now, really pedantically, and you're going to roll your eyes at some of the things I say, but I don't care. I've compiled a list of games where bees make an appearance, and whether or not I'd consider them to have been shown in a positive or a negative light. You can see them passing now really quickly. There's quite a lot of them. Out of the 41 games I looked at, a staggering 70% of them represented bees in what I would consider a negative fashion, portraying them as an in-game enemy that is actively hostile or a weapon. I will state here that it's not necessarily a bad thing that bees are a weapon. Hell, I love the bee attack in Bioshock. It was practically the only thing I used throughout the game. I just think it's really interesting to see how we represent bees in our medium. I'm totally on board with bees attacking the player or an enemy if their hive is attacked. That's a perfectly natural response for an animal if you disturb their home. If you go around shooting or kicking beehives, then you probably deserve to get a bit stung. Games like Cuphead, Donkey Kong Country and Majora's Mask use bees as hostile enemies for the player to overcome, perpetuating the false narrative that bees exist in a constant state of active hostility. I often see people instantly becoming terrified when they see bees in real life, or when they walk past a swarm of bees trying to find a new home, which is uncalled for because bees tend to just want to mind their own business. As a side note, I do want to admit that occasionally you will get hives where the bees are a bit more hostile than usual. This tends to be because of the genetics from the queen. Beekeepers will often requeen a hive if the queen is laying drones that are a bit dodgy like this. In Breath of the Wild, the player can use a torch to scare bees out of their hive in order to steal their honey. This is an accurate portrayal of what smoke actually does to a hive. Smoke causes bees to start drinking the honey in their hive in preparation for a quick escape if a forest fire were to get too close for comfort. An added bonus is that drinking the honey makes their abdomens swell, so it makes it really hard for them to sting humans as well. Other Zelda games also have bees in them. In A Link to the Past, the player can catch bees to use as a helpful ally that will attack enemies on the screen. You can even find a bee called the Golden Bee or Good Bee, which is a more powerful one that leaves sparkles behind. I think that's pretty cute. Kojima's favourite, Metal Gear Solid, goes absolutely insane when it comes to bees. There's bee walls, there's bee snares, there's bee clones, and bee armour. It's ridiculous, yes, but it still portrays bees in an inaccurate and negative way. Games like Metal Gear Solid 3, where you shoot a beehive and it lands on the floor and it destroys it and sends out a bunch of angry bees to attack people around it, really trivialise the fact that the bees have taken at least a month to make that big hive. Inside one of those hives is about 20,000 to 80,000 worker bees, and you're destroying their home. It's a bit of a dick move. If you were to give an enemy like the Pain the power over something like cats or hamsters, people would be up in arms, but the fact that it's bees makes people care a lot less. Buzz from Earthbound is a friendly bee character from the future who dies when another character mistakes them for a dung beetle and swats them, which I think really shows that human nature of swat first and ask questions later. When I had a pet praying mantis, I had to put signs up all around the house when I had him out of his habitat after he'd grown wings, because people have this natural tendency to swat at anything small that moves quickly. Of course, some games do portray bees in what I would consider a more wholesome way. This Is How Bees Work by Superflat Games is a really nice little experience that I desperately want as a screensaver. It's a bit of a weird one, and oddly enough, it doesn't actually show how bees work, but it portrays them as having a positive influence on the world rather than a negative one. Another good example of chill bees having a good time is in Proteus, where they just bumble about and have a normal bee time, just having fun and enjoying the music. Stardew Valley has a more positive outlook on beekeeping. It recognises the benefits for having bees near your crops, and that honey produced by bees near different sources of nectar tend to taste different too, affecting their value. However, and I hate to be a buzzkill, the way Stardew Valley portrays keeping bees is lacking. It boils down to just building the beehive and assuming they'll look after themselves. Unfortunately, if you've had any experience working with bees, you'll find that they need a lot of checking on and looking after at least once a week. Even more so over the winter if they haven't stored enough honey to survive. Beekeeping is like looking after any animal. It's a full-time job and you're responsible for that organism, or in this case superorganism's, well-being. The first time I ever went beekeeping, the head beekeeper made this point very clear, because a lot of people, for some reason, have got the idea that beekeeping is just as simple as sticking a hive down and leaving it. If the time it takes to look after bees properly was more commonly known, then perhaps players would have to treat their beehives in exactly the same way they treat the rest of their livestock, checking on them daily and making sure they're well fed to get the best products possible. Instead, bees are relegated to the back when you're looking after your chickens and your cows and your sheep and your horses and whatever, because they're just insects, and what's a person got to do with insects? Super Mario Galaxy has a really nice set of levels where you actually get to be a bee. I really enjoyed them, although I found crawling around on the giant queen bee to be a little bit uncomfortable. Oddly enough, the queen bee herself isn't actually that much bigger than the drones in real life. She's not like the termite queen who happens to be really thick. Oh yeah, that's the good stuff. Anyway, moving swiftly on. The game B52 sees the player trying to collect nectar from plants on a side-scrolling level. This game allows players to actually sting enemies on the screen if they get too close. A lot of people are under the common misconception that bees die when they use their stinger. This is inaccurate for the most part. Bees can sting over and over again, unless the skin of the animal they're stinging is thick, like with the mammals. A game where a bee can sting other bugs multiple times in self-defense actually makes perfect sense. Also, did you know that bees try to hug some of their enemies to death? It's true. Sometimes they'll gather around an intruder and beat their wings so fast that it cooks their intruder from the inside out. They basically kill them with hugs. That's amazing, right? And yeah, once again, I'm not going to talk about the game adaptation of that movie. I don't talk about that movie. Please do not bring it up again. Thank you, bye. Part 3. The conclusion. The media hasn't been kind to our friends the bees. This is something they're trying to fix though nowadays, considering that bees are dying out at an alarming rate. If 50% of all the cows on Earth died mysteriously, then I can tell you that we'd probably be panicking a lot more than what we are with bees that are dying at a similar rate right now at this very moment. Video games tend to use bees as a lazy enemy type to play off the common stereotype that bees are dangerous and scary. I feel like this is compounding misinformation and is solidifying lots of people's fears about an animal that has been an important part of our cultures for millennia. We have a responsibility to help bring bees into a more positive light. So maybe next time you're thinking about adding a bee enemy to your game, why not think about adding a bee friend instead? Or maybe one of those wasp enemies, because those guys are fucking horrible. I am joking, of course. Wasps are really important to keep down the amount of rotten fruit and dead bugs littering the ground in the summer, but they are absolute bastards. I'm not saying that you can't have negative portrayals of bees in games, of course not. Bees will sting you if you're stupid and you mess with them without any sort of training or knowledge of how to handle them. However, I think we need to be more respectful towards bees because they are really important for us. For the most part, bees are gentle creatures and will only ever attack if they feel threatened. So, next time you come across some bees, if you don't know what to do with them, just calm down, walk away, and don't mess with them. Then you won't end up getting stung. Thank you for watching. This has been my first video like this, and I'm thinking about doing more in the future, so let me know what you think in the comments. If you want to know more about bees, then check out the links in the description. Thank you! Bye! I think I found bee memes.
I used to bark the bees. Seas that rise when I bark the wood. Now in the morning I sleep alone. Sweet the beast I used to.
It just keeps going. What the fuck is this? What the fuck is this? What the fuck is that? That's weird. The internet is weird. It's full of weird people. I mean, I thought I liked bees, but this is weird. I don't know.